All right, people. I like to engage in a lot of deep thinking. Okay, a lot of deep thinking here on this channel, and here's the deep thought that I have right now. What are we gonna do with the Republicans? Take a look at this interview. It's an excerpt from a Newsmax interview between, well, General Flynn and Greg Kelly of Newsmax.
I hear some murmurings, about the staff shakeup at the Pentagon. They're putting people in place who might not be opposed to aggressive action. And the president does have some options, at least on paper. Can you tell us what those options are and your opinion, if he might take any of them?
So remember, General Flynn is the disgusting piece of shit human being who lied to investigators and then took the fall for the Trump administration by lying in court. And then got pardoned by Trump because Trump will pardon people who do him favors the way any other mob boss would.
Well, I don't know if he's going to take any of these options. I mean, the president has to plan for every eventuality because we cannot allow this election and the integrity of our election to go the way it is. I mean, this is just totally unsatisfactory. There's no way in the world that we are going to be able to move forward as a nation with this. So the president has and I just mentioned one of the options. I mean, he could immediately, on his order, seize every single one of these machines around the country on his order. He could also order, within the swing states, if he wanted to, he could take military capabilities and he could place them in those states and basically rerun an election in each of those states. I mean, it's not.
He's describing martial law. Martial law. General Flynn is suggesting that Trump can send troops into states and force a re-election and seize ballot machines.
Unprecedented. I mean, these people out there talking about martial law, it's like it's something that we've never done. Martial law has been instituted 64 times, Greg.
Though, hey, mind you, never once has martial law been instituted by the loser of a presidential election to try to change the results of that election. Is that true? Yeah, sure. But martial law during, like, wartime is very different than martial law because I lost the election, let's redo it.
I'm not calling for that. We have a constitutional process. We clearly have a constitutional process. I think you highlighted some of that in your previous segment. That has to be followed. But I will tell you that I'm a little concerned about Chief Justice John Roberts at the Supreme Court. I mean, we can't fool around with the fabric of the Constitution of the United States. And I think that right now the Constitution, if the Supreme Court doesn't get involved in at least making sure that the fabric of that Constitution is held together, and all they have to do is look at the evidence. They have to look at the evidence. I'm not certain. In fact, I don't believe that the Supreme Court of the United States has even looked at the merit of any of the cases that have been put forward yet. What they've been looking at is process files, whether somebody crossed a T or dotted an I.
Listen, if your lawsuits are so bad that they're getting dismissed based on fucking process, that means they have no chance on merit, okay? Trust me. If the Supreme Court, if your lawsuits are so incompetently managed that they don't even meet the requirements for being seen by the Supreme Court, you're not going to have much luck in the actual process. I'm looking right now at the history of martial law in the United States, and it looks like the last time it was used, if I'm reading this correctly, was in 1961. Usually when martial law is invoked, it's in a specific city during civil unrest or war, what have you. Strike. If you go back here, it's like strikes and union workers and stuff like that. I can't find any examples of martial law being declared nationwide or in like multiple states to facilitate like an election recount process. That does not seem to be, that does not seem to be something that has much in the way of precedent. So listen, I want to be really, really, really clear about this, okay? I want to be exceptionally clear about this, okay? We're now at the point where top-level Republican officials are openly bandying about the possibility of martial law. Would the military go along with this? That we'll talk about that in a second, okay? There is no standard of authoritarianism more evident than this? I don't know how else to phrase this. This is incompatible with a functioning democracy. It cannot function with the existence of these people. And if you go on conservative forums, and I invite you, if you go on conservative forums right now, you will find that there are a great many Trump supporters who are advocating for martial law themselves. They want Trump to swoop in and fix the problem. The problem being, of course, that he lost by 7 million votes to Joe Biden. The Donald.win is full of it. The Donald.win, by the way, isn't just people promoting martial law. It's people advocating for the outright slaughter of people who voted for Biden. You can go, it's like top comment stuff. It's not like errant comment or two. It's whole threads of people who are just openly advocating for the wholesale slaughter of tens of millions of people. Yeah, small government party. Now, that's just an interview with General Flynn, but just a few days afterwards, General Flynn had a White House meeting with Donald Trump. And even though Donald Trump publicly denied it, White House aides said that the subject of martial law had come up in the discussion with General Flynn and other Republican officials. So we're at a point now where the President of the United States is openly bantying about this idea, or at the very least is being exposed to those arguments. We do not know if Trump directly advocated for it or if it was just being discussed, but we do know it was being discussed. And in addition to the threat with martial law and the threat to seize these ballot machines, we had apparently we had confrontations between, if you remember, Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, the lunatic QAnon lawyer who they had to publicly disavow, and now apparently might get promoted to the head of an investigative committee into election fraud. So now she'll be given an official government position from which to procure the Kraken. And additionally, and this is, of course, we're operating on hearsay here because we only know what the Trump aides have said, but there were other lawyers at this meeting who were saying, this is a bad idea. Everything you're suggesting is illegal right now. This is literally against the law. This is unconstitutional. And Sidney Powell, and this is the quote, said, "Don't be quitters." So that's the position we're in right now. The law to these people is nothing sacred or inviolate. It's an obstacle to get around. Now, I want to be clear about something, and I genuinely do believe this. I don't think there's any shot of any of this happening. I don't think any of this is going to take place. What I really think this is another opportunity to drum up a fuck ton of money via the what do they call, save the vote, what do they call it, the save the election, that whatever committee they have. He wants to raise money because 50% of it goes to paying down his campaign fees. I think that's it. I think it's going to be a big campaign fundraiser. Sidney Powell is going to be put at the head of an investigation. She'll say, we have the, it'll be, you know, like those Twitter or their Facebook posts, and it'll be like some guy holding up a sign, and it'll be like, if this gets 100,000 likes, I'll propose to my girlfriend. You know what I mean? It'll be like that. Sidney Powell will be like, if we can raise $10 million, I'll release the Kraken. And then like the Kraken will be like a floppy little, I don't know, like a small and unimpressive fish. So this is silly, obviously. It's all very silly, but I don't understand why more people aren't talking about this. I mean, we're literally at the point where the President of the United States is contemplating martial law. Everything, all the shit the boomers and Tea Partiers said about Obama, all the FEMA camps, martial law, it's happening right now under Trump. We have a natural disaster, COVID-19, and we have threats of martial law. And this is happening right now, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. And Republicans are going to go along with it. I've said this before. Some people call this an authoritarian take. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think a democratic society cannot survive people using democracy to push anti-democracy. I think it is the responsibility of citizens of a democracy to excise the political power and authority of people who would seek to destroy that democracy. That's my personal opinion, you know? For example, you know, you have monasteries and temples that'll take in any newcomer, any traveler. That's a thing. The Sikhs do that, you know? Sikhs are very cool. I had one in my school. They're very, very unique way of looking at the world, and they're very kind in my experience. And I don't know if it's called a temple, but they're places of worship. They don't turn people away. If you come there, you know, you can stay there, and that's a rule. Gurudwara. Sorry, my tongue fat in my mouth. Whatever the case may be, they're lovely people, and they'll take anyone. And here's the thing: what do you think would happen if you went into one of these places of worship and you started throwing Molotovs all over the place? You tried to light the place up. You tried to commit arson. You think you'd get kicked out or no? And then you'd say, as you're being kicked out, I thought you took on everybody. I thought you took on all people. And to which the answer is, we'll take on anyone who doesn't destroy the ability for the next man to come in. And that's my belief in democracy. You can run. You can do whatever you want. That's the goddamn, as long as you follow the laws. But as soon as you threaten the ability for the next election to take place, you lose that right. And we're at a point right now where I legitimately don't think the Republican Party should be allowed to exist. I genuinely believe that. It's a criminal organization. If you take a look at the Republican Party and their flagrant disrespect for the fundamental democratic principles of this country, the extent to which, this isn't just Trump. Every congressperson, every senator, every elected official, privately, a lot of them know Trump is lost. Publicly, they can't say that because they know that if they do that, they'll get flamed by Trump on Twitter and lose their re-election bid. So they sit there and they're all complicit to what is essentially the end of democracy. Democracy can't survive people like this. It actually can't. It cannot do it. We can't do this again in 2024. We can't keep doing this. We're at a point right now where the kind of media that conservatives consume has utterly isolated them from reality. It's not a matter of being able to reach across the board and agree with them either. Like, have you tried talking with your average Republican? I don't mean like your edgy internet skeptic. There's some variance there. But like your boomer Facebook Republican, these people are cultists. I mean that. There are people in this country, tens of millions of them, who just operate. They live in a different world. They're done. They're gone. It's not like that for us. It is not like that. I've met a lot of wacky, like liberal grandma hippie types. These people can be moved over. They absolutely can. They're reasonable. Not all of them. I mean, some people are unreasonable, but as a group, Democrats, even very far left ones, engage with reality. Now, there are Democrats who are like brain-addled, still with her Hillary Clinton stands, and we hate them, but they aren't really representative of the general thrust of the Democratic Party. Whereas what Trump is doing right now is the Republican Party. That's the whole party. That's the entire system. And if you take a look at all the shit they're doing, like, here's an example right now. The Attorney General in Texas recently levied a lawsuit without basis against the swing states where Biden won and took it to the Supreme Court, even though he had no standing to file that lawsuit. A bunch of other states joined in, even though they had nothing to add, they had nothing to contribute to the evidentiary process. And then it got struck down without even being seen because they had no right to file that lawsuit in the first place. And why did it happen? In all likelihood, because that Attorney General is being investigated for federal crimes and he's looking for a pardon from Trump. Democracies can't survive this kind of behavior. Our institutions are just barely strong enough to keep us alive this election. Do you think the same is going to happen in 2024? What if a Republican happens to win in 2024? What if they make it all the way to 2028? What happens then? Do you think we get a 2028 election? I legitimately don't think so. I genuinely don't think we get another election after the next Republican presidency. Now, I'm not a soothsayer. I could be wrong. It's possible, for example, that the Republican Party has a break-off with Trump and they smash back towards moderate, politics and they end up being irrelevant for a while. And that'd be amazing. I mean, that'd be great. Give the Democrats a couple of election cycles to breathe so that we can, really fuck with them. But do you think this is because of Trump or this would have happened without him? The seeds for this were laid a long time ago. Ever since Reagan, all of this has been heading to, it's been boiling over and over. For a long time now, the Republican Party has been nothing but an animus for racial and religious bigotry. Like, let's be real here, okay? That's what the Republican Party runs on. The Republican Party claims to run on small government and low taxes, but then they raise taxes and increase the size of the government and build the surveillance state. They claim to run on austerity, but they spend unfathomable amounts of money on the military. They claim to run on equality of opportunity, but they gut every social program designed to facilitate that outcome. The only the only things they run on and then deliver on are anti-black, anti-immigrant, anti-Hispanic, and anti-non-Christian policies. That's it. That's what they run on and follow through on. That's what they do. Anti-social spending, anti-welfare, anti-racial equality, anti-progressivism, anti-immigrant, everything. That's what they run on, and they follow through on that. And you know what? We live in a democracy. I think people like that should be able to run. I do. I think pro-corporatist bigots should be able to run and win elections, too. I do think that. I think that that is a right they have. But when they start jeopardizing the underlying democratic infrastructure that allows for us to make this country better, that's the line. And they have crossed that line. Our battle is off the cultural one. You can't legislate away racism. Legislation can help, but at the end of the day, it takes time and a lot of effort to move people's minds over. It wasn't that long ago that the majority of the population thought that interracial marriage was immoral, and we've moved over from that, but there are a lot of people who still believe that. A lot of people, tens of millions of people, I'd bet. So you move past that, and it seems when it comes to a lot of progressive values, time is on our side. We just win, and we win, and we win. That's great. But we don't get the opportunity to demonstrate the superiority of our ideas if the Republicans get what they want. And I'm worried. And I genuinely want to know what any of you think a party that operates like this has any right to operate in government. I don't know. What do we do with this in mind? It seems like everyone should be going insane right now. If you love democracy, if you love freedom, then it should be your goal, to the greatest possible extent, to politically invalidate Republicans. Every step needs to be taken to minimize the impact they can have in this country. And I would say this, as far as I'm concerned, the demographic Republican is every bit as legitimate and deserving of outreach as the demographic pro-murder or pro-rape. There are a lot of people out there who are pro-rape. Generally, they get arrested, unless, of course, they're in the Republican Party or running for Republican presidency. But I consider their values roughly equal in terms of legitimacy. We lock those people up, but we don't need to lock Republicans up. You know what we need to do to make sure they never win again? We just get rid of the Electoral College. It's that simple. There are more of us than there are of them. If we got rid of the Electoral College, that would be that. It's just one or two simple steps. The only reason they're even this popular is because they have handicaps. That's it. That's the only reason. It's because they have handicaps. That's it. They need those handicaps. How long do we let a minority of tyrants govern the way our society develops? The people responsible for the Patriot Act. The people who put ahead an attorney general who threatened to charge Black Lives Matter protesters with sedition. The party with the president who bandied the possibility of martial law. We can't let them do this. Do you see a path forward without massive violence? They will commit the violence. We don't need to. Our ideas are better. There's no reason for us to be violent. All we need to do is make sure that the electoral processes in this country are fair and representative, which the Electoral College does not guarantee. One little step, and they're made, well, at least in the presidential sense, they're made politically irrelevant. And how lovely that would be. And you know what? It'd be better for them, too. A lot of people, they're like, this is fascism. No, it's not fascism to prevent democracy from dying. The thing is, though, and the sad thing is, a lot of Republicans think they're in the exact same position as me. Many Republicans, because of the Trump administration and because of Republican media, believe that Democrats are the ones who have flagrantly destroyed democracy by cheating in this election, and that if Trump were to invoke martial law, that it would merely be their last-ditch effort at preventing Democrats from getting away with things. The difference is, of course, that I'm right and they're wrong. So, you want to go far enough. I mean, pretty much every authoritarian government gave the population justifications for the things they believed and the things they did. I mean, if you go to Nazi Germany, like the population was taught that the Jewish people were insular, selfish, that they destroyed the economy with their banking practices, and so on and so on. But that doesn't justify a lick of what happened to the Jews.